What's going on, guys? Aero here and welcome back to another video. Now in today's video, I want to talk to you guys about Nintendo's newest Switch system which just came out a few days ago, the Nintendo Switch OLED model. And while the system has been available for a little bit, there's still some information that we don't really know exactly about why it was decided for making the system, but fortunately Nintendo got to have a special interview with the actual developers and engineers of the Nintendo Switch OLED model, so you can actually take a look at that. I'll have it linked below in the description if you want to go and read the entire interview, but I basically took out some of the most important things that I found the most interesting, and I'm going to talk to you guys about them in this video because there's definitely a couple of things that do get answered here and you can kind of understand exactly why they decided some of the things that they did when making this system. Now real quick before we get started, I just want to quickly mention that I recently just got partnered with Best Buy, so I am going to have some affiliate links below in the description for the Nintendo Switch OLED model as well as some upcoming games. So if you guys are planning on buying some of these things, I would really appreciate it if you could click the link below and then buy it from there. It doesn't cost you anything extra and you can really support the channel, and Best Buy does have free shipping as well as delivery on launch day, so it would be really cool if you guys could buy some of those things from there. Alright, but in terms of the Nintendo Switch OLED interview, it says here, you said that at first you had not decided what to include in the development of the new model, but while you were coming up with ideas for features to be included, did you have any criteria for selecting them? And it says here, during the process of deciding what to include in the new Nintendo Switch OLED model, we referred to the reactions of our global customers who were playing Nintendo Switch. Fortunately, I believe that the concept and the experience of the Nintendo Switch has been well received, so rather than creating something completely different, we decided it would be better to keep the current form and deliver a better experience. In other words, we wanted to refine the existing functions and design. That perspective led to the technical choices that we ultimately made. Because we wanted to refine what we already had, we made sure that we wouldn't add any new features that couldn't be used with previously released software. For example, if we added a new button or function to the Joycon controllers, you wouldn't be able to use it in previously released software or games unless we updated them as well. Instead of doing that, we thought it would be better to improve and enhance the functions that our customers are already experiencing. So this kind of gives you an idea exactly why they didn't really add any new buttons or configurations to the controllers, because they still want to make sure that all of the existing games that released before can be used perfectly with the new Nintendo Switch system, so that makes a lot of sense as to why they didn't really decide to do things like that. And so this also explains why the Nintendo Switch OLED model isn't really more powerful than the original Nintendo Switch that came out, mainly because this system wasn't made with the mindset of making a better Switch, but rather just kind of refining the original Switch that was already out. So that's why they just decided to perfect the things that were kind of a little bit flawed with the original Switch instead of trying to make like a definitive better Switch than like what we already have. The next thing that was asked here was you didn't want to change the thickness of the console, and it says here no, in terms of compatibility of the Nintendo Switch OLED model being able to fit in the existing Nintendo Switch dock, the thickness isn't something that we could easily change. Also, if we did make it thicker, then there would be a gap where you attach the Joy-Con controllers. That wouldn't be a good fit, so making the console thicker wasn't an option. By the way, we managed the material for the stand form piece from plastic to metal, and this is because compared to plastic, metal can be made thinner while still maintaining its strength. This is another thing that isn't mentioned on the official Nintendo website, but you might notice when you try it out. We could make the stand thinner by using metal, but because the surface area of the stand was bigger, even with the thinner OLED display, it still wasn't enough. The people in charge of the stand and display discussed things like changing the thickness of the display cover, and then in the end they worked together to make many adjustments, stretching the limits. So this explains why the Nintendo Switch OLED model still has the same exact thickness and they didn't really add like a lot of power to it and make it thicker, mainly because they still wanted to make sure that it was used with the existing docks, because if they made it thicker, you wouldn't be able to fit it in like the normal Nintendo Switch dock that you have from 2017, so that makes a lot of sense. And they also talked about how the stand on the back of the Nintendo Switch OLED model is actually made out of metal now, and that is true. When I picked it up for the first time, it felt a little bit cold, and then I realized it was actually metal, so it's much sturdier than the flimsy little kickstand that was on the original Switch, and it definitely feels much more rigid, and it's just a very good stand. Another thing that they talked about is how the Nintendo Switch logo on the Joy-Con grip is actually engraved now instead of just being printed on like it was before, so these are a lot of little things that weren't mentioned before like on Nintendo's website or people talking about them, but they are kind of like little subtle changes that have happened also. And similar to that, the Joy-Con straps also have like a dotted white line on them instead of just being solid black like on the original Switch, so there's a lot of these subtle changes that people don't really notice also that have kind of gone into the development of the Nintendo Switch OLED model. They even talked about how the HDMI cable is a little bit different, and that's actually kind of cool too, because I remember when I opened up my Nintendo Switch OLED model and picked that up, it felt a little bit weird, but the actual like HDMI cable that comes with this system is much more rubbery and flexible, and you can kind of twirl it around and move it in any direction, and it's not like the kind of rigid wire that came with the original Nintendo Switch HDMI cable. Another big thing that was asked here was, so far we have heard since the release of the Nintendo Switch in 2017, based on user reaction and technological advances during the product lifecycle, which is unique dedicated to video game consoles, you have considered improvements, and those results have led to the Nintendo Switch OLED model's visible and invisible changes. However, at the beginning of the interview, you mentioned that there were improvement ideas that came from trial and error that are employed in the current version of the Nintendo Switch. Could you elaborate on that? And so they say here, sure, something that has been improved after the launch in 2017, before the release of the Nintendo Switch OLED model, is the battery life. Nintendo Switch is a home console that you can take anywhere, and even after its launch, we wanted to reduce the power consumption and extend the battery life as much as possible due to its portability. There was also a concept of a device dedicated to handheld play like the Nintendo Switch Lite. Therefore, we have continued to make improvements to the SoC, which is basically like the system on chip that's inside of the system, and even after the release of the Nintendo Switch, by adopting a semiconductor technology, we were able to reduce the power consumption significantly. As a result, we have offered this model with extended battery life to our customers since 2019. This SoC with lower power consumption is now also implemented into the Nintendo Switch OLED model. So basically, if you guys didn't know, there's actually kind of like 3 versions of the normal Nintendo Switch, where you have like the day 1 Nintendo Switch, which came in a box that looked like this, and then you've had the special red box 2019 Nintendo Switches that are basically just normal Nintendo Switches past 2019, and these ones use a new chip that's inside of there that actually extends the battery life by a significant amount. So basically, like the original day 1 Switch that you see on the left here, that Switch you could probably play Breath of the Wild for like 2 hours, but the new ones that we have here with like these red boxes, they can play Breath of the Wild for like 6 hours, and so they're basically saying here that this exact same chip is now also being used for the Nintendo Switch OLED model. So these are kind of little subtle changes that aren't really talked about a lot on Nintendo's website, but they are also improvements to the system. They even address some stuff here about the Joycon drift. So it says here, another major characteristic of Nintendo Switch is the Joycon controllers. A big part of the user experience comes from the Joycons, but were there any improvements? And they say here, Joycon controllers have a lot of different features, so we've been continuing to make improvements that may not always be visible. Among others, the analog sticks have continuously been improved since launch, and we are still working on improvements. The analog stick at first release cleared the Nintendo reliability test using the method of rotating the stick while continuously applying a load to it, which was the same criteria as the Wii U gamepad's analog stick. As we have always been trying to improve it as well, we have investigated that the Joycon controllers used by customers and repeatedly improved the wear resistance and durability. The parts of the Joycon analog sticks are not something that can just be bought off the shelf, but are specifically designed, so we have undergone a lot of considerations to improve them. In addition, we have improved the reliability test itself, and we have continued to make changes to improve the durability and clear this new test. When the effects of our new improvements are confirmed, we promptly incorporated them into the Nintendo Switch Joycon controllers, and that are included with the console, the Nintendo Switch Lite, and ones that are sold individually that were manufactured at the time. This involves the internal components of the Joycon, so you can't tell the improvements from the outside, but we use new versions of the parts when we repaired them, and also similar continual improvements have been made for the Nintendo Switch Pro controller as well. So basically in here they are addressing that they are constantly looking into the Joycon controllers as well and trying to improve them, because as everybody knows, one of the biggest issues that has happened with Joycon controllers is the concept of drifting, where the controller sticks usually are just moving by themselves and shuffling through menus and moving your characters automatically in the game even though you're not inputting anything, and drifting has been a big issue for all of the Joycon controllers. So it's nice to see that Nintendo has kind of been subtly changing things behind the scenes and updating them, and they have recently been trying to put like a new layer of padding. I'm pretty sure I've seen videos about it with the Joy-Con, so it's good to see that that's also being implemented into the Nintendo Switch OLED model. And then the final thing that they say here was, I believe that you have told us that these are changes that are not limited to the Joy-Con, and that you are continuously making small improvements on various aspects of the hardware. And they say here, yes, this is an attitude that we've had in the past and will continue to have in the future. Hearing customers' opinions, we have been thinking about what we actually wanted but couldn't do at the release of the Nintendo Switch in 2017, and what we think can make customers happy, and once realized that one culmination of this process is the Nintendo Switch OLED model. Having said that, we will have much more ideas that we'll think, if this can be better, we can do this, with regards to the Nintendo Switch OLED model as well, so we won't stop carrying out these investigations going forward. At Nintendo, we tend to say that whenever we release new hardware, we immediately start thinking about the next one. But this doesn't only mean that we're always working on new product development, but also that we are constantly working on what can still be done to products even after they are released. And then Shioda adds here by saying the technologies that Nintendo employs for its hardware are widely investigated and tested, and we have to think thoroughly about how to bring these technologies to customers. We sometimes apply the new technologies to products that are already released to make them even better when we feel that these particular technologies have the potential to deliver a completely new experience to customers. Then they may be applied to these new products. What triggers this is often the engineers' work on the technologies born from their smallest curiosities. Their outlets differ, and some ideas going public as improvements and some others becoming new products. I believe that development members are thinking deliberately every single day about using technologies in Nintendo's unique way. And so that basically just talked about kind of the philosophy that they have when developing new kind of updates and revisions to their systems, and it's kind of interesting to think that they're always kind of just developing something and thinking about how it can be improved. And so that's why you never really know, because we've always heard these rumors about a Nintendo Switch Pro potentially coming, and while we did get the Nintendo Switch OLED model, that could just be one revision inside of a life cycle of a whole bunch of other Nintendo Switches that could be coming very soon. And I do believe that to be the case. Like, this Nintendo Switch of course didn't have any upgraded power or anything like that, but rather just an improved screen and some better refined features. And because of that, it's very possible that maybe next time they could be investigating into a power increase and adding even more things like that. So we're just gonna have to see what they really decide to do moving forward. And so yeah, there you go guys, that's pretty much all the information that we have from this Nintendo Switch OLED model interview right from the developers. Of course, the entire interview is linked below in the description if you guys want to read it. I picked up basically just the most interesting parts to talk about in this video, but it is kind of a long interview, and if you really want to kind of read through everything and understand a lot of it, it is pretty interesting if you're into it like I am, so I will have it linked below. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video, then definitely be sure to click that like button, and also comment down below and let me know how you guys feel about this. How do you feel about some of their strategies and ideas when developing the Nintendo Switch OLED model? Definitely be sure to comment down below and let me know. If you're new to this channel, then please be sure to subscribe. I'm definitely gonna have some more Nintendo content in the future, so definitely be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on that. Click on that bell to become a part of the notification squad. Go follow me on Twitter at Aero so you can be featured in videos, and also join my Discord server as well. We've got a bunch of people in there who are always talking about Pokemon and Smash Bros and Nintendo, so definitely be sure to join that. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching.